I am so excited to welcome you not only to Jacksonville, but to the launching of the podcast called The Covenant, more specifically, the Sistah Covenant. And yes, I did say Sistah. What is the covenant, the Sistah Covenant? It is a circle of friends, my friends for 20, 30, 40 plus years, your friends, all of our friends, coming together in a safe space at a time such as this. We as women of color, we are counted on to nurture our families, our children, our significant others, our spouses, our community, our corporate boardrooms, and everything in between. But who fills our cup? I think about flying, and when we get ready to take off, what is said to us first? Put your oxygen mask on first before you can assist others. And that exactly is what the Sistah Covenant is all about. A safe space to encourage, to listen, to cry a little, laugh a lot, but most important, to empower and to fill our cup. Great Sunday morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sistah Covenant. Oh my goodness. We are in our 6th month, and the Sistah Covenant is making some bold moves. We are in Miami, y'all, and that is my home away from home. I grew up in Miami, Florida, so I have so enjoyed my time, my short time here over the last day and a half. So we have a treat for you because the Covenant Keepers, we got together and oh, what a time we had on yesterday afternoon. So we'll say that for the end, but we have a total treat this morning as we have the art of conversation around culture and social consciousness. And I have just the two phenomenal women joining me this morning to talk about that powerful conversation. But before we get there, we always want to just thank you for your support of the Sistah Covenant by coming on these Sundays, 1st, 3rd, and 5th Sunday of the month. We ask that you continue to invite all your friends, all your sisters, and your brothers, and everybody else to this rich and empowering dialogue. We thank you for supporting us with the Sistah Covenant merchandise. Down here in Miami, I even saw someone with a mask and a cap yesterday. So beautiful, beautiful merchandise. You see it displayed there. You too can have your merchandise. And as you know, we are partnering with, and we always partner with a nonprofit. And this month and moving forward, it is UNCF. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. And if you choose to purchase over $100 of the Sistah Covenant merchandise, $10 of it will go directly to UNCF. We had Gwen Hewitt on a few podcasts ago, and you may remember, she indicated that, of course, you know of UNCF giving scholarships to young people to attend HBCUs. But when the pandemic hit, our students were impacted most. They, in some instances, just needed a $50 bus ticket to get home. So they instituted the emergency fund, and that is what your dollars will go to. So if you don't choose to make that $100 purchase, just go to our page, thesistahcovenant.com, click on resources and charitable giving, and you can make a donation via PayPal that we will ensure will get to UNCF for that emergency fund that they have established for students all around the country. Our contact test. We invite you to be a part of the Sistah Covenant, and we invite you to be a part of our giveaway contest. And the rules are simple. You just like and share our latest Facebook stream. This one today, the one from 2 weeks ago. Subscribe to the Sistah Covenant on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Join our email list on our website and comment done on the image that is posted on Saturday before the stream. It's as simple as that. And you will get a beautiful Sistah Covenant mask. So, who is our winner for this podcast? Oh, congratulations, Brenda Baker. Brenda Baker will be receiving a beautiful bling Sistah Covenant mask. So Brenda, if you are out there this morning, please put your information in the chat so we can make sure we get you your mask so you can represent the Sistah Covenant. Now, our private conversation that we normally have after the Sistah Covenant, we're not going to have today because we're going to hit the road getting back to Jacksonville. However, we do invite you to join us on Sundays for that rich conversation because, as you well know, we unpack a lot in an hour and we are not always done with that conversation. So join us for the private conversation on Facebook. It's very simple to join that Sistah Circle. You open Facebook on your phone or your computer, search the Sistah Covenant, find the Groups tab, click on the group title Sistah Circle. The Sistah Circle, click Join Group. It's just that simple. Now, I am over the moon excited in welcoming this first featured guest. You see that beautiful video that we play every Sistah Covenant Sunday, and it is taped at the Comer Museum of Arts and Gardens. And you see that beautiful garden. And we have the privilege this morning of talking to Dr. Andrea Barnwell Braunlee. Dr. Andrea Barnwell Braunlee is an art historian, curator, and writer. She is with the Comer Museum, the George W. and Catherine Gibbs Director and CEO. Dr. B, as she is affectionately known, served for 20 years as the director of the Spelman College Museum of Fine Art and the senior strategist for the Atlanta University Center Art History and Curatorial Studies collection. She is widely recognized for her wise leadership, ambitious vision, and influential publications. And I want to welcome to the Sistah Covenant, Dr. B. Good morning, Dr. B. Uh-oh, you're on mute.
Story of my life. Story of my life.
It's the story of all of our lives. Good morning. Great Sunday morning. Oh, Dr. B.
Again, just
Thank
happy
you.
to be in community with you today. So happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, welcome to Jacksonville and welcome to the Sistah Covenant. We are so happy to have you with us. So listen, tell us about who is Andrea Barnwell Braunlee?
You know, I will say that I'm passionate about faith. I'm passionate about family. I'm passionate about art and culture and the opportunity to come together regularly to talk about those things. I'm passionate about college students, and I'm really passionate about coming together to talk about difficult ideas, difficult things that impact all of us at the same time. And I'm really happy to dig deep into those topics today with you.
So you mentioned, Dr. B, about being passionate about students. And I know students gave you that affectionate title of Dr. B. You had an established, very successful career in Atlanta at Spelman University, and you chose to leave that and come to Jacksonville, Florida. And we're so happy that you did make that choice. But tell us about that. Why the decision to do that, and why now?
Sure. I was very, very proud of the work that we achieved together at Spelman College. So I was the director of the Spelman College Museum of Fine Art for 19 and a half years. And it was an amazing ride. It was an incredible opportunity to be the first full-time director at that institution. So very, very proud of the students that I had the great fortune to work with and to help them think about careers in museums, think about careers in academia. There aren't many African-American art historians. It's growing slowly but surely, but there are even fewer museum professionals. And so that really became my passion and my calling. So I'm still in touch with many, many of them. And after 19 and a half years, I decided that I would start to think about some of these incredible invitations that had come. I will be honest and say that over the years, I just didn't answer the call when people would invite me to, consider opportunities. And then after, a lot of things were happening, it wasn't simply just the pandemic, but, after all these students that I had mentored and continued to be in conversation with, how can I really encourage them to think about new adventures and new opportunities and to seize the world, and the world is your oyster and all that other good stuff. And I wasn't doing the same myself. So I will say the stars aligned, and I decided to answer the comer's call, and very, very happy that I did, and very delighted to have been on the ground here for a little bit more than 4 months now. And it's going exceptionally well. And again, very, very pleased to be here in Jacksonville.
So Dr. B, I know you're not the first female CEO of Comer. Are you the first African-American?
Yes,
woman?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
Tell us about that. Tell us about that and how that has felt for you here in Northeast Florida.
Sure. I mean, one of the statistics that I often talk about is the fact that there are only 5 African-American museum directors of major museums. And by major, I always qualify that because I'm not talking specifically about historically Black colleges and universities. I'm really talking about museums that are in larger cities, that are considered mainstream, meaning not just specifically focused on African-American art, history, or culture. And so that number is very, very small. It's a very small group of us that are in this space. So I take it very seriously. And sometimes I really have to pinch myself because it just seems crazy that at this point in time that those numbers are so low. I share that with you to say that I'm very, very excited and privileged to be here at the Comer, but I also think about the incredible shoulders that I stand on a regular basis. There are there's so much work to do. There are so many museum professionals that I learn from. And indeed, I am the first African-American director CEO at the Comer Museum.
So you tell a story. I've heard you about your first week. So you have a little exhibit at the Comer right now, the Zaneli Maholi exhibit. Will you tell a little story about how that came to be? That's a pretty bold exhibit, and we're going to see some of those beautiful images here in a moment. But tell us about how that actual exhibit got an opportunity in Northeast Florida to bless us.
Sure. Well, the Reader's Digest version goes like this. First day in the office, the incredible chief curator, Holly Karras, comes to my office and she says, welcome, all these really great things. We have a great meeting. And she starts off the meeting by saying that we have some bad news. And that bad news is that the exhibition that they have been planning for many, many months at this point has been delayed due to COVID. And I said, okay. I said, well, we have a couple of options here. I said, it could be you and me in the galleries from 10 to 4 every day, doing a performance piece and wowing all of our visitors. Or we can take this lemon and make an exceptional lemon martini. She said to me, you just skipped the lemonade. You skipped the lemonade. And I laughed so hard about that because, yes, we were in a situation where we had to skip the lemonade. I told her, give me 72 hours to process this, and went about the business of finding something else that would perhaps activate and stimulate Jacksonville's audiences. So I have the really, really good fortune of being among some incredible colleagues. And one of the people that I called was Renee Masai. I sent her an email. She is the senior curator at Autograph. Autograph is an incredible, incredible organization in London devoted to Black photographers. And I called her and I told her, by the way, I've left Spelman, and secondly, I need your help. And she answered the call, and I told her that I wanted to bring the Zaneli Maholi exhibition to Jacksonville. Again, to make another long story short, I had the great privilege of bringing this exhibition to Spelman College. So again, had an incredible, incredible team. There were 4 of us in Atlanta at the Spelman College Museum of Fine Art, and we presented the United States debut of this exceptional exhibition. So Zaneli Maholi. Zaneli Maholi is an incredible visual activist who is based in Durban, South Africa. They are astounding on so many different levels, but this particular exhibition is so meaningful and so beautiful and special to me for a lot of different reasons. First, Maholi has made it their business to document the lives of the LGBTQ communities in South Africa. Secondly, as a visual activist, they are very interested in saying, we need to look at history and we need to look at the impact that it has had on Black people, Black bodies, et cetera, around the world. So in this particular series of works, they're all self-portraits. There are about 80 self-portraits that are all Black and white. And people never believe me. If you look at the 4 that are on the screen, they say that can't be that same subject. And indeed, they manipulate themselves throughout their work. I keep referring to themselves. Not only does Maholi identify as queer and non-binary, but Maholi is actually identifies as they and them. Those are their pronouns. So when we go to the next slide, you can see how these works actually look in situ. What I'm excited about is some of the things that people have been saying about this show. People have said things like, by far, my favorite exhibition to come to the Comer. So, exhibitions take years to develop and to plan for and to present. So the fact that this exceptional team at the Comer Museum that I just cannot say enough about went about their business in the most professional and enthusiastic ways, I just have to sit back and truly, truly marvel. So the board was excited about it, but I will tell you that there were certainly some people that said, wait a minute, this is Jacksonville? We're presenting the work of a queer non-binary artist. We've got to really be thoughtful about this. So I'm happy to say that comments such as these have truly been the dominant narrative, and very, very privileged and proud to bring this particular exhibition to the space. It's on view until June 20th, and it has sparked conversations. My favorite conversations really center around these accessories and things that are in the photographs. Most of them are household goods, like clothespins, and I see stools, I see clips of all sorts that Maholi transforms. But I'd be remiss if I did not say that Maholi darkens their skin in post-production. And makes incredible comments about the relationship between what we see and who we expect to see. And when we look at people, when we accept people or don't accept people for who they are, they amplify their Blackness. And again, at this moment, when we're trying to figure out how can we really connect with people, it's these types of photographs that are deliberately darkened and are deliberately talking about Black bodies that are bringing us together in some powerful and very, very meaningful ways. So I could go on and on about Maholi. I'll just say that when you experience the work in person, it's transformative. And I invite everybody to come before this exhibition closes on June 20th. It is the last stop on this internationally touring exhibition. And then it closes for good. But in a nutshell, Maholi is exceptional. That's probably the best way to describe it. Committed to activism, using their body, using a number of accessories that are at their disposal. An incredible world traveler who has taken so many self-portraits. In fact, their goal was to take a self-portrait a day. And we are just so privileged to have about 80 of them on view at the Cummer right now.
Dr. B, what I'm most intrigued about, I was in awe when I saw the exhibit. I had no expectation. I had seen the beautiful images and I thought, oh, it's just so pretty. And when I got there and observed and learned and read and saw the eyes were just amazing to me. I thought, wow, it's the true meaning of seeing it out of someone else's lens. And the beauty of art is you may see something totally different than I when I'm observing. And Tuesday I may come back and see it totally different. And I've done that with this exhibit. And I saw on that one slide, someone said, one of your guests said, I need help. I need help understanding that. What has that been like for you? Have you been like a fly on the wall in the gallery?
Oh, I love spending time in the galleries for a couple of reasons. One, when I go downstairs and I don't have my Cummer name tag on, which is not appropriate, but when I go downstairs without my name tag, it allows me to have conversations that people don't know necessarily who they're talking to. It also allows me to be a fly on the wall. I often talk to my sister about I'm part Doberman because I have really, really keen hearing and I can hear what people are saying across the room on many occasions. And so it gives me an opportunity to hear what people are really saying and thinking. So yes, I have been an incredible fly on the wall. It's allowed me to connect with people one-on-one and couples that have come in. I have seen the staff ranging from our security staff, right on up to visitor services, right on up to our garden staff. I've seen so many different people, the art handlers, so many people have been riveted by this exhibition. So yes, I have had the opportunity to be a fly on the wall. And it's just been a transformative experience on a lot of different levels. So I know we'll have many more of those conversations.
Well, Dr. B, what's next for the Cummer? I want to know what's next for Andrea, but what's next for the Cummer? Because you set it pretty high. How do you top down? You came out of the gate blazing.
Yes, I'm very, very excited about really starting off on this exceptional foot. But Summer at the Cummer is what's next. So I have obviously not been here through a summer just yet, but it is my understanding that Summer at the Cummer is amazing, bustling, activated. We activate not only the back where you are by the river, of course, where you all took your incredible photographs, but we also activate the front of the space. So it becomes a real destination for activation. It becomes a destination for fun. We've talked about quality access and fun. We're ready to blow that out of the water. And the Summer at the Cummer enables to do that. So it's very, very exciting in that regard. What's next for me? I am still very much new to this town, and I am trying to meet absolutely everyone that I can. My calendar on one hand is this crazy train wreck, and Wanda and I laugh about it all the time, how I want to meet so many people, but at the same time, there's just not enough time in the day to do all the things that I want to do. So what's next for me is to continue to learn about not only the history of Jacksonville and what's happened long before I even thought about coming, but also thinking about ways to strategically position the museum going forward. I'm passionate about community. I'm passionate about being a good neighbor. I'm also passionate about the things that are behind the scenes that are really rooted in organizational excellence. We've got to keep this topic of activism and the power of art. I mean, if you believe like I do, that artists are truly sort of the arbiters and the fortune tellers, if you will, of society. Maholi was creating these works long before a pandemic. So it's just one example of how this work, which is allowing us to see so many injustices, so many inequities, they're at the forefront of this. So artists are at the forefront of this. So the short answer to your question is I am committed to figuring out, the best ways to position artists and topics in society within Jacksonville, the region, and beyond, and to really work together to put the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens on the map in new and riveting ways. Certainly it's been on the map for a long time, but let's expand that. Let's expand our footprint and get after it together.
So on the Sistah Covenant, part of what we promote is us being good to ourselves.
Yeah.
You're a busy lady, and you've, as I said, you hit the ground running here in Jacksonville. What fills your cup? How do you replenish, and who inspires that for you?
Sure, there are lots of responses in that question. First, I'm a huge tennis fan, and several years ago, I started playing tennis myself. So I certainly get out there and play tennis and enjoy that. So in addition to that, I'm an avid reader, and I must say that in this moment of transition, I have not taken the opportunity to really think about reading the way that I do. You ask who informs and who inspires me. I think about my incredible time at Spelman and the exceptional people that I had a chance to spend time with. But I've also been very reflective about the presidents that I have had an opportunity to know and to grow with. I was a student at Spelman, and Dr. Janetta B. Cole was the president when I was the student there. And I know that she has been a guest on the Sistah Covenant in the past. I was hired under Dr. Audrey Forbes Manley, an incredible thinker, Surgeon General of the country. I mean, an incredible thinker. I worked under Beverly Daniel Tatum, who you talk about somebody who has who's written so extensively. I just think about things that she's written about young people and education, and just an incredible thinker. And then, of course, I had the great opportunity of working with and under Mary Schmidt Campbell, who's the current president of Spelman College, who's an art historian, who is, again, just so inspirational. But in terms of, I read their works, I listen to the things that they present in terms of their lectures and their speeches. But I'm also, like I said, an avid reader, and I think about books like The Warmth of Other Suns and The Water Dancer that have fortified me in very real ways and made me think about creativity and history and migration. And so there are many things that fill my cup, but I'd be remiss if I did not say how much I enjoy spending time with my family and traveling and just getting quiet with them, whether it's long walks like we took yesterday or just being still with my family. It's an incredible opportunity to walk out the promise of faith, walk out the promise of togetherness and God's promise. So I have lots of things that keep me busy, and lots of things that I'm really compelled by on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Dr. B, As I've said already, we are so very fortunate to have you as a part of our community here
Thank
in
you. Thank
Jacksonville.
you.
But we're blessed to have you in the space that you're in art and in art conversations and amplifying voices that may not get heard if not but for people such as yourself. So you have to promise to come back to the
Thank
Sister
you.
Covenant.
Absolutely.
You all are doing something else big. I'm excited for the summer as we are feeling a little more comfortable and we're getting out. We're getting ourselves healthy and ready to live our lives. And I know your beautiful museum and gardens will be a part of that for my family and for so many of us. So we invite you to Jacksonville, the Comer Museum, to meet this wonderful, wonderful lady. Thank you, Dr. V.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, she is amazing and such a warm, warm individual. So we are truly, truly fortunate to have her as a part of our community in Jacksonville. So now I want to introduce you to another friend of mine, an amazing woman in her own right, Shawana Brooks. Shawana Brooks is the current executive director of the Jacksonville Cultural Development Corporation. But she is more than that, and you'll get a chance to experience her. And I have to say, experience. She is a literary artist, a public speaker, a curator in her own right, and just a dynamo. So Shawana, join me in the studio this morning. Great Sunday morning.
Great Sunday morning. Thank you again for having me, Pat.
Just what's on your walls? I mean, look at that. We could just spend the next 10, 15 minutes talking about that. That is beautiful background.
Thank you. That is the work of my husband. So, we love to express art all over our home.
Well, it is totally beautiful as you are. So tell us, who do we see before us? Who is Shawana Brooks? Tell us about your journey.
Oh, it's definitely been just that, right? A journey. I didn't start off in a way that I ever thought about becoming a curator or this cultural producer and doing exhibitions and programs and just being so passionate about the community and the history that we have here and how to service within those gaps in Jacksonville. So, I started, of course, within customer service. And I think through that is where I really got an understanding about people and conversation and just how being in an artistic realm frees up people in a different way to talk and to kind of get in touch with one another. And it really inspired me, especially because the love of my husband, to get to know so many different types of artists, being a literary artist and being in those circles. And then what I discovered from talking to visual artists. And it was so interesting hearing like these conversations that would happen like in the wee hours of the evening and hearing the consistent frustrations of the artist. And I just wanted to understand that more. So I kind of activated myself to really trying to get in conversation with different arts and cultural leaders. At the time, the previous executive director of the Comer, talking to, the directors over at the library and other museums that we have here in our city. And it made me understand that a lot of things weren't as dire as the artists were saying, right? It really became someone to become a voice for them, to advocate for a lot of the things that they needed, and to be able to kind of interpret, right, and speak this language of artists, but also a little bit of commerce. And so that we can have these conversations about why artists aren't getting as much representation as they need, especially BIPOC artists, artists of color. And then when you look at, how are we resourcing them? So that became a little bit of my journey of why I wanted to be more involved in the arts and culture ecosystem.
So Shawana, we just had a moment to talk with Dr. V at the Comer. So we know art can be very powerful, and it is powerful. But how did you come to be this spokesperson, if you will, this person that saw the beauty of storytelling and art on the wall to amplify voices, as you mentioned, especially Black voices. Tell us about that and the work, your powerful work around that.
So, funny enough, a part of my, I guess, origin story really does sit in the nexus at the Cummer Museum. My husband was part of an exhibit called Lift a few years back, like around like 2016. And I saw, like the reflection, of course, of the conversations that were happening in that gallery space. And as Dr. B has said, the staff, because a few of the people that were still around then are still around now, they were just so glorious in the way that they were welcoming the artists, welcoming the community. And we were in the gallery so much, we were having these conversations. And more as I was having those conversations, I would hear from other community members about like, wow, like you're really amazing at this, and being able to discuss and talk about the art and giving us perspectives that we never had before, because you get to be in, again, conversation with such diversity, different social economic backgrounds, different cultural influences, and you had something to share, whether someone saw what you were seeing or not. Just like you all talked about before, it's being able to at least come into this space, see the art, and it gets you to wanting to dialogue. And especially if there's someone close by and they're looking and you're looking at the same piece, you organically start to come to one another. And that was what to me was the story, right? I wanted to see more people become empathetic to different social justice issues, to different policies and procedures that I really feel, hem up, unfortunately, Black lives, brown lives, other people of color, right? So that's where I started to see my own nexus, and was luckily enough to be pulled up from the public library. The previously deputy director took an interest in some work I was doing out in the community and asked, would I be interested in coming to activate this new space they were developing in the library? I don't think they knew that I was interested in turning it into a gallery, but soon enough, everybody joined on board. We had one of our most exciting exhibitions that was inspired by the work there of Spelman College. I went for a visit in Atlanta and became transfixed thinking about Black women and the work that they were doing. And I had not seen a show in Northeast Florida that featured Black women solidly like that. So that became my inspiration for wanting to do a show called Keisha, a Black female experience of identity and race. That show, and showing around how you can really use identities to be able to talk about, again, so much in establishing and looking at the intersections of the things that unfortunately sometimes make Black women dismissed in this society. That was incredible. And I saw that the community was wanting more. And so I really took that initiative to continue to do those kind of shows for the past 3 years. And it really led me to wanting, again, not to just make sure that we were doing these amazing shows, beautiful, curated, well lit. It became about the conversation, but more importantly, I've always been thinking about the artist. It's important to talk about art, but it's also important to talk about artists, especially artists that live here in our community, because a lot of our institutions and galleries and museums, of course, they do hold space for our local creative community. But more than that, they're looking at the bigger, international, sometimes regional or national art system. And I wanted to be able to continuously adapt the space that was looking specifically at the local creatives that live and create here in order to, again, better monetize them, but honestly, to uplift their work so that people would be more familiar with them. A lot of people see the work and maybe they familiarize themselves, but they forget that we cannot dismiss the artists and the creatives that are doing the work, so that we continue to amplify and uplift what they're doing in the future.
Shawana, you just said something that really brought it home to me. We have lived for the last 14 months in a pandemic. And obviously that has had far-reaching tentacles. So when we drill that down to an artist, we see what's behind you and we appreciate the beauty of it. But then we go back into our world, whatever that looks like, in our comfortable spaces, and the artists. What have you seen during this last 14 months? And I'm sure with the other pandemic, the social unrest, their voices being amplified through their work, whatever that work be, from art on the wall to storytelling to whatever art form there is out there. but yet how do they continue to move and do those things if their work is not being appreciated because it's a pandemic? Is my question making sense? What are you seeing? What are you seeing in the community around that?
So yeah, I feel like you're asking me again, like, how's this 14 months kind of, not necessarily change artists and art, but what are those kind of interconnections and how have artists adapted? More of us really should take, I think, precedent to the artists that are in us. So often, again, when people see beautiful work, they like to compare themselves, and as much as they can, or maybe they should, right? I think we all have something around that in us that needs us to want to have that creative expression. Look how much the arts carried us through the pandemic. We talked about the books, right? So when I think of art, I don't just think of the visual artist, even though as a curator, that's normally the work I'm holding first. But then I start to think about the poets. I start to think about the authors. I start to think about the musicians. Musicians in the very beginning started to really transform how you could, still feel in connection around that art making, right? We saw DJ sets happening. We saw different, huge world performers invite people in to kind of have a better intimate experience around their work. I've been thrilled in thinking of that. And honestly, it's so weird to say this, but this past year has been my most successful in really trying to, bring that art back into the community, back into the neighborhoods, looking at who doesn't get a chance to come to some of those institutions, or who doesn't feel invited, or who doesn't feel that if they go into this space, they're going to feel isolated, or that they don't understand. There is still a big elitism to art. And I think half of what at least what I've tried to do is to kind of, again, remove some of those barriers, make the access feel a lot more comfortable to enter, that, you can come in with, the flip-flops, or, your jeans or your shorts or your shirt, and you're going to still be treated and welcomed as this wonderful guest that we want to have into our area. So I've seen art, again, carry us through in so many different ways. But again, I never see there to be continuous conversation around artists. And I've been so compelled again by, Black female creatives and what they've been able to do, and the murals they've been able to produce, because we, again, could not come into contact in that way. And as things are starting to uplift themselves, we cannot forget how much the artists, again, carried us through this time, and to make sure that we're looking back at how to support them, how to continuously have them. I think artists, again, can be infielded in every particular sector that there is. And so my business is really trying to get them more acclimated into the nonprofit sector, and to be, again, those storytellers. As Dr. B so generously said, artists are those arbitrators of telling us the truth and helping us to kind of forward vision and cast where we want to go, and being a more progressive society. And I think it's time for us to listen and connect generously with them about what that is, and to have more dialogue that activates us all, not into just being conversational, but really getting into the action.
Supporting them financially. Exactly. Finding ways to support them financially.
Yeah, people think art is so expensive, but most artists are so willing to work with you. A payment plan, startup, $5 a week if you want to, right? You can buy some incredible work. I've got a few, continuous payments on other pieces that I want to get and receive in our household. And collecting really should be about your personality, but that's what we should be doing. If we want to see our artists more in the coming museums, more in different places, in the Met, we've got to start to be those proprietors of their work now, collecting and supporting them so they can continuously have that. People didn't have patrons for no reasons. And a lot of that is because of, again, if you're not being supported that way, you're not being shown, you're not being exhibited, you're not going to be able to break into those other circles that are going to get you outside of our city and into other national museums.
So your current role, you just took an executive director position at the Jacksonville, Cultural Development Corporation. So tell us about what you're doing over there. And I know you have some exciting exhibits that are coming forth, or they're here now. Tell us about that, Shalana.
Yes, right. So I have accepted a role, and this is I accepted about a year ago, but we've been a little bit more quiet about it as we really been trying to look at the organization, support its years and its history of really doing phenomenal neighborhood work and bringing art into those areas, and looking at again the stewardship of where we really want to support and continue us around Black artists and BIPOC artists. So I'm excited to be in this role. And luckily, we just received information from the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund that a grant that we put in to create an artist in residence program based there at the center, and their newly christened corner gallery was accepted, and we got funded for almost $150,000 to be able to activate art in that area for the next year. So we're so excited about the programming and the conversations, again, that are going to continue, and how we can look at what the other institutions are doing and make sure that there's some synergy to get us both in there. And I'm not going to say this isn't a huge deal, because it is a huge deal to have their support, to understand that we need more centers and bases, especially downtown, where people feel like that's not even a neighborhood, but that's the neighborhood not only for the people who live there, but that's our neighborhood for the city. And if we're not going to at least start activating and not feeling like our downtown looks like, a ghost town after 5, people feel that it's unsafe. It's not unsafe. There's no one there. We've got to start coming back downtown, remembering the La Villa community that was multicultural and really set the history and designation. So I'm excited to think about the placemaking, the equity, the accessibility, the inclusion that Jacksonville Cultural Development Corporation is going to be able to commune in bringing these artists on a continuous basis to support not only what the nonprofits in the building are doing, but nonprofits that are out and based in the community, that we need to start shining a spotlight on their work and stop treating people in that scarcity model, right? How are we sharing resources? How are we doing my favorite C word, which is collaborating? We've got to be more collaborative and check some of those egos as we continue to move through this. And so it officially will kick off in August. But in the meantime, we just premiered as the extension of our pilot program that we did with the Jesse Ball DuPont Center around virtual conversations. We just had our artist, Kirsten Williams, premiere her Like-Minded exhibition, her first solo exhibition as a new graduate of the University of North Florida. She's also an artist educator. And so we're so excited to have that work up until the end of July, where anytime that the building is open, anybody is open and welcome to come into the corner gallery as we continue to activate the space. And we want to hear back from people as they want to, what do we want to talk about? Where do we want to move things? And how do we want to use this center as that center for conversation?
I love it. My dear friend Wanda Willis just put in the comments, community connection and collaboration. That's what we need to be about: community connection and collaboration and amplifying voices. This is another way, in my opinion, not only for us to appreciate art, but to come together in some commonality where perhaps we can heal communities across the land. And what you guys are doing, Dr. B, yourself and others, in my opinion, is you can't put a price tag on what you're doing. The activism, the conversation starters. You can't be in a space and be angry and ugly. You must be in a space like what you create and want to come together with collaboration and conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we have to continue to do. Shawana, thank you so much for being a part of the Sistah Covenant this morning. And we invite you back as you have more to present to this community. And I know even beyond Jacksonville.
Thank you guys again for having me. I'm so excited to be here with the Sistah Covenant. You've had some amazing guests, and even following, Dr. B, I'm a tremendous supporter of hers and of yours. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya. Bye. Oh my, it's just amazing what these women and what we are embarking upon. It is an opportunity for us to have rich conversations that are thought-provoking and, as I said, can possibly lead to conversations that heal us in the ways in which we need to beyond the pandemic healing. So I'm super excited. As I indicated at the top of the podcast, you're in for a treat. Dr. Anita and Tanya Grace and I spent a lovely, lovely afternoon on yesterday, just hanging out together and having real sister circle conversation time in Miami, Florida. What better place? What culturally diverse city tops Miami? And I can say that since I am a Miamian. It's beautiful. The waters, the beach, the beauty of culture all around us and diversity. And we chose to spend our time in Overtown, Miami, at the historic Ward Room in Overtown, Miami, which has it's the mecca of culture and art, the historic Ward Rooming House, which has a rich history all of itself. So I want to share our time with you now as we went to eat at the Red Rooster, which has a rich history of itself with famous individuals passing through that establishment, but our time at that beautiful space, the historic Ward Rooming House.
Hello.
Thank you for hosting us in this lovely, lovely space. We are here in the historic rooming house, or you tell us, the historic
Ward
rooming house.
Yes, ma'am.
In Overtown, Miami.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about it.
So Shadrach Ward and his wife were a Bahamian couple that moved here from Key West, as a lot of Bahamians who inhabited early Miami, as you may know. And he was an architect. He built this as a rooming house in the early 1900s, rebuilt, I think, in the early 1920s. And as you know, Miami at that time, Overtown was one of the oldest, and still is one of the oldest communities, period, in Miami, this in Coconut Grove. And it just so happens that both of those communities are historic Black communities. And so Miami, when it was founded, a lot of people don't know that 40% of the people who signed those incorporation documents were Black.
Mm-hmm.
And so Miami and this community go hand in hand.
Well, my parents, I grew up in Miami.
Oh, yeah?
And my parents did a lot of clubbing
in
this area.
Yes.
That's for another podcast.
Yes.
But this community fell into disrepair
Mm-hmm.
in the early 80s during
Yes.
the crack
Yes.
epidemic. Tell
Yes.
us how we're now seeing a resurgence of this community.
Well, as in most communities around the country, there was a decimation of community through drugs and through the crack area, as you mentioned. But also, what you had in this community was all of these highways that were built directly in the center of this community. And so often we forget about that as you look at nationally where Black people live in large urban communities. Segregation created a lot of reverberating effects. One of those was when mass transportation was to be built. A lot of times, whether it was Newark, New Jersey, where I come from, whether it was Detroit, parts of Chicago, when they needed to build those highways as they were the white flight, they now need to build roads for those white folks to come back into the heart of the city to work. They decided to build those highways to the heart of Black communities. It was almost a form of retribution. And so that plus the crack area here really decimated this community. But there's a resurgence. I like to call it a reclamation. The cultural arts in Overtown go hand in hand, and it's been that way for a very long period. And we see a resurgence here.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
suppose that I want to be an art connoisseur.
Uh-huh.
What would I do? Tell me a little bit about that and about Hampton Art Lovers as well.
Well, Hampton Art Lovers was created by me and a couple of Hampton alumni. We all went to this incredible university led by this incredible president, William Harvey.
I concur.
Yes. And what we realized after graduating that many of our friends, many of our fellow alumni, although we weren't directly involved in the arts, we were all doing something very creative. Mm-hmm. And we all felt that we wanted to accentuate that. and we developed Hampton Art Lovers to promote the arts. And what we all realized as well is that our university is a very historic university as it relates to the arts and culture of our people. The university created the first African American museum in 1868. It created the first art museum in 1868. The bedrock of our collection is something called the banjo lesson, which was done by Henry Tanner. And if you remember, Henry Tanner was the first internationally recognized African American artist out of Philadelphia who moved to Paris in the late 1880s and stayed there for the rest of his life. So when you think of in the arts of Black folk moving to Paris to express themselves more fully, whether it was Josephine Baker, whether it was Baldwin, whoever these individuals were, it started with Henry Tanner. So we own that painting. That painting displays a grandfather teaching his grandson how to play the banjo. Most people, when they see that painting, they recognize it because their grandmother may have had, you may have grew up with a print of that. And that is the bedrock of our collection. In fact, that painting is one of the few paintings that Henry Tanner actually did reflecting Black culture. When he moved to Paris, he began to do a lot of religious painting. And that's what he's more or less known for. And so, we grew up with this history of Black art, and we just felt like we wanted to give back to our university. We wanted to highlight the university's museum and its centrality within Black art. And then eventually I joined the International Review for African American Art, which is the preeminent scholarly journal of Black art, which was founded by Samela Lewis, a graduate of Hampton University, a profound historian, art historian, and artist herself, and the first African American to receive a PhD in art from Ohio State University, I believe in the 1940s or 50s. So she started this magazine in 1970s, 1975, somewhere around there, and now it's published by Hampton University. And so I'm honored to serve on this editorial board. So that's kind of how we came to get into a space like this over some time. And that's what we're doing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the permanent exhibits that are here? I see one to Miami with Love by Rashawn Alexander. What are some of the permanent?
So we traditionally focus on historical African American artists. We do some contemporary artists as well. This was a pop-up show that we felt compelled to do because of what was happening in our community, as in many communities around the pandemic. Rashawn Alexander is a very famous DJ by the name of DJ Fly Guy. But as did most people in our community, his life changed once the pandemic happened. And if you are in any sort of arts and entertainment field, or you're working in the hotel industry, in Miami, our economy is very much dependent upon tourism. And so people who are in that sort of business, there was a hard stop when those beaches closed.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in other fields, maybe we started doing things at home, and maybe our professions, the way we practice our professions changed in drastic ways, but our money didn't stop, or it slowed down a little bit. But if you worked at a hotel, you were done. It was over. If you were a DJ, you were done. A waitress, many of the ladies who work in those hotels cleaning beds, that had massive effects on people and families that lived in Little Havana and Little Haiti and Liberty City and so on and so forth. So him as a DJ, we felt that when he pivoted he picked up a camera, we thought that was something very interesting. And it represented what a lot of people pivoted to, or whatever it is they did. But he picked up a camera, he started documenting the pandemic. As you can see here, these are some images of what was happening in Miami Beach, because it's very important to this show, because he's a DJ, how the beach reacted. So Miami Beach and Fort Lauderdale Beach, they announced on the same day they were closing their beaches. And that put a stop to tourism in our community. But he also, when he was documenting this, he also was documenting the pandemic. And we all know that the pandemic documenting the George Floyd protest. Right. And we all know that, but for the pandemic, we might not have had that focus on that knee on that man's neck. Mm-hmm. And so as you see here, you see people expressing, it's bad when we have to protest during a pandemic. And then this leads into a more fuller discussion visually about what was happening during the pandemic. during the George Floyd protests. He followed these protests just because, he didn't have anything else to do. He wanted to develop his passion, photography that he had when he was younger, and it culminated in a book called To Miami with Love. And then when he did that, that's when he and I had a conversation. I said, man, I know you're not, a profound, well-trained photographer, but you took some very good, powerful imagery at a point in time to encapsulate what we all have been going through. And so I said, hey, I want to curate pictures out of that to tell a more fuller narrative. And that's the show that you're seeing here today.
Chris, this is powerful. I know when we walked in, it's like you're there. You're there at these protests.
Mhm.
You see the anger in the eyes.
Mhm.
It's you're absorbed
Yes.
in it.
Mhm.
How is it for you being a curator in this space at this time in our history? And do you see this as the art form that's going to help you heal it?
Yes, exactly. I think reflection is very important. I think visually, we now are dealing with these images over the past year of what we all saw. We may not have been at those protests, but if you see some of these pictures, you may be able to feel what it was like there. I know for myself personally, I mean, some of these images have a lot of power. I mean, there's an image of him taking a photo of his mother, and it's a very close-up photo, but he took it 100 feet away, 100 feet away. And he did that because, as most people who had older parents in early stages of COVID, we didn't know what the effect was. So people were doing drive-bys to see their loved ones. And so he took a close-up picture of his mother. And I just think those are sort of things that we're going to remember. When you see images and pictures of people with masks, we're going to remember 2020, 2021. And I think that's important visually for us to have a record and think about what transpired over the past year. We opened up the show. We opened up on the anniversary of the first deaths in Miami from COVID, which was roughly around March 28th, 29th. And that is a hallmark. And we wanted to do this out of love. So not only did we do the show, every Friday we did something called Dedication Fridays, where he curated music around a particular image. And then every Tuesday we did something called To Miami with Love Supper Club at Red Rooster, where he DJ'd at Red Rooster. So we did a multimedia, food, music, art, the whole thing for a month so that we could all reflect about art and protest of the pandemic.
What do you want to say to the city of Miami, this area of Boca Town, and the world about what it is you're doing here and how we can all be a part of it?
Well, HamptonArtLovers.com, number one. Please visit us. Our Instagram is Hampton Art Lovers as well. One thing I would like to describe, and I think I didn't answer fully your initial question. What do I say to someone who wants to get involved with art? What I would say to, what I normally do, our ability to appreciate art is not something that you need to learn. It's something you actually have already. You did not, as a child, there's not a child in this country that grew up without something on their wall. We have been appreciating art since we were children. You've been putting posters on your wall. There's nothing different than spending $1,000 or $50,000 on a painting. There's nothing fundamentally different than that, than being a 12-year-old putting a picture of your favorite artist on the wall. You were inspired by that artist, you're inspired by this visual, and you want to see it every day. There's nothing fundamentally different between someone who buys a $50,000 painting and that child. There's something about slavery that has desensitized us to the visual art. Elizabeth Catlin, very famous African-American woman artist, grew up in Washington, D.C., spent her whole adult life in Mexico. She moved there in the 1940s to escape racism in America. But when in her late 70s, I think, she was talking to a group of students, and she asked the students, why is it that music, hip-hop music, Black music, is used to sell everything. And, but yet visual art, Black visual arts do not have the same vitality. And of course, no one had an answer. And her response was, well, African music traveled with us from Africa. It came, the drum came, it was hurt a little bit, but it still survived because we could sing, dance, as long as it didn't hurt the running of the plantation. In fact, if singing helped you work harder, go right ahead. In church, the same thing. It helped us praise. And if that's what helped you, maintain so you can deal with this inhumane, structure you're in, go right ahead. But you never had to, you didn't own those songs. They came through you. Whereas visual art, you have to have time to do visual art. You have to have materials to do visual art. And whatever you make is never yours because you're an enslaved human being. So we could never own anything we made anyway. The only piece of African visual arts that we see sustained over a period of time are things called quilting. The unknown patterns that African American cultures have made that they will never get credit for. Or a lot of the furniture making that was done by African American hands. It's those sort of things that you still see the visual arts. And so what I would say to the average person when it comes to art, it's still in us. The same inspiration that you get when someone puts a song on, it takes you somewhere. You can discover that through the visual arts as well. We have to peel away the ignorance that was provided to us by the lack of visual art in our lives. And I think that's what I would say to that connoisseur. Like we are. I talk to people and I ask them, what was that? Did your mother have a wooden spoon hanging in the kitchen? A lot of people did it, especially older people, right? That's called a sculpture. And so these things are amongst us. They're natural to us, but we don't recognize them as us collecting art. But why else would you have a big wooden spoon or fork? You weren't eating from it. It's a piece of art.
That's right.
So it's a matter of just us sort of rediscovering these tendencies. It's not about finding or identifying. We've already been doing this. We just have to come within the knowledge and consciousness of that ourselves.
Well, Chris, you have awakened some things just in our conversation here this afternoon that I didn't think about, but you're so on point. We're resilient, and our people, the adage of turning lemons into lemonade or neck bones or pig feet into a meal is what you're talking about. And so we thank you for welcoming us into this safe space.
Yes, ma'am.
And to have this powerful and just engaging conversation around art, culture, and social activism.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Raising the social consciousness.
Thank you very much. Come again.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to just give a heartfelt thank you to Christopher Norwood of the Hampton Lovers for welcoming the Covenant Keepers into the Ward Rooming House, the historic Ward Rooming House. Quite a gem, my dear friend Karen is saying, quite a gem in the heart of Overtown. So we invite you to come down to come down to Miami to view that beautiful, beautiful space, and then go up to Jacksonville to the Comer Museum and Gardens and appreciate art. Not only look at the pretty, but look behind the artist, into the eyes of the artist and what they are lifting and what they are communicating. And then have the art of conversation around culture and amplifying your social consciousness. As always, my sisters, be bold, be brilliant, be brave and beautiful, but be blessed.